Hey guys, MrPokke here. I just wanted to make a super quick video regarding what I think should be some of your considerations for the SR2 SSR rearmament, or rather the Stellar Bloom upgrade. And as you guys can see from my screen over here, you can probably guess who I'm going to be recommending, and that is going to be none other than Clarissa, right? So I have been using Clarissa extensively for quite a lot of different PvPs, and I have climbed a considerable amount of wins with Clarissa because the amount of damage that she's going to be able to output is absolutely absurd, on top of having the ability to have the action value delay, which in PvP is going to be extremely important, especially if you're just trying to take away the enemy squishies, right? I kind of want to show you guys what my builds are going to be, how are you going to be using her, when are you going to be drafting her, the arcanas, everything. So without further ado, let's just get into today's content. So first things first, because starsavior has just gotten a very big update in their half anniversary, where all 8 of their SR units can essentially be done with a stellar blooming to convert them into SSR units. So they are going to be having a drastically improved kit, which can potentially rival them with the SSR counterparts for a lot of the current SSRs that we have right now. I would say that one of my favorite units that I've used myself, that is going to be Clarissa. You can just see she has the highest amount of CP on my entire account, because you can in fact exchange the dupe, right, the limit breaks from the shop directly by using your tokens. I'll show you guys a little bit on how you do that. So my build for her is going to be as shown over here: full speed crit as well as crit damage. You don't really need to give her a crit set, because I can still hit 90% crit rate while running a 4P speed, because her built-in resonance is going to give you quite a lot of different amount of crits. So I can see there's going to be sense of crit, and then we're going to have a 6% crit rate, as well as even another 3% crit rate right here. So you can kind of just give her the 4P speed to still hit a good amount of speed over here, since she does want to go really fast, as her entire gimmick is going to be tied around being a very fast dealing DPS. So she kind of reminds me a lot about Epic 7's Commander Rowena, as well as Ethereal Restar's D-Ting, where she has a insane amount of personal DPS, as well as action value manipulation, which allows her to squeeze out a lot of extra turns, which drastically not just improve her personal damage, but also your entire team's damage taken can go up as well, especially even in PvE content, since she can delay the enemy, right? So with all that being said, that is gonna be my number one choice, which is gonna be Clarissa. For the other SR unit that I'm gonna be testing for myself very soon, I am personally gonna be eyeing for this other unit, that is gonna be Claire. So Claire's setup bloom allows her to essentially completely bypass preemptive guard. So I'm guessing when she is gonna be coming out, if you are gonna be dealing with a lot of different defenders going forward in the future, this should be a very strong ability, which also gives you additional stealth, which can further ignore preemptive guard, but you do need to first kill an enemy. So that's gonna be the next unit I'm gonna be testing. For all of the other SR units, I think they definitely also have a little bit of their potentials, but kind of just need to see how they're gonna be shaping up. I was having my eyes on Besta for a little bit, but because the next unit we're going to be having is going to be Wedding Avondale, and Wedding Avondale has been shown to pretty much just counter shield units in general, so barrier units. That's why I'm going to be holding on Besta a little bit, because I think Wedding Avondale is just going to completely destroy her. She kind of just feels like another version of Haiti, which can also give you a counter while providing attack down, but your weapon MD is just going to be a little bit too scary. That's why I am most likely going to be holding on her for now. All of the other SR characters, and kind of just see for yourselves, and let me know down in the comments below on what do you guys invested in, and if you see they are going to be strong, right? So for today's content, this first part of the video, I'm just mainly discussing my thoughts on the SR. Next unit will be Claire when I get her eventually, but for now we are just going to be focusing purely on our Clarissa, right? So my build for Clarissa is going to be seen over here: 10k attack, 200 speed, 91% crit rate, and 101 crit damage. Ideally, you do want to get this crit rate to as close to 100% as possible, because you can only get the action value delay from a critical hit. All right, so this is going to be 100% chance with 20% action value delay. The other two unique mechanics for Clarissa is that she can deal an additional 20% damage if the enemy is Moon, which is basically your blue units, such as, for example, Emily, right, your Faye. So let me just come and show you guys this over here. So all of these blue units, you are going to be doing very well, which is also quite nice, because we just got ourselves Wedding Carmen, and I can say for a fact that Clarissa, if you're going to continuously aim down in Wedding Carmen without a BX build, you can actually take it down extremely quickly. So we do have these 4 units that are extremely popular in PvP right now. That's why I say Clarissa's usage rate in PvP is definitely going to be up there, even in a high level RTA, right? So for the skill level priority, I'm just going to be doing 688. You could bring this up to a little bit higher if you want to, because the basic is going to be a little bit cheap without using the gold cubes. between your skill as well as ultimate, you really want them to at least hit level 8 so that you get your 2 different cooldown reduction. Bring your skill tree into turn 4 and then your skill 2 into turn 3. So these two are going to be really important just for the additional cooldown and buffs. So the way that Clarissa's kit work is that you want to always cast S3 first to give yourself a personal speed buff. So once you get this speed buff, it means that your next attack with Clarissa, it is almost definitely going to outspeed the enemy DPS, because a unit with speed buff is always just going to give them the additional 20% speed. So unless you are going to be severely outsped by someone like, for example, Bunny Charlotte with a high speed and built-in elasticity, we will give her another 20 speed, then maybe she might get outsped, but it's super rare for Bunny Charlotte to get that level of speed tuning, so take that as it is. So if you are gonna be able to outspeed your DPS from your S3 into S2, you will pretty much just one-shot almost every single DPS that you're gonna be coming across through their defense ups, through maybe even like a Heidi. So that is just gonna be an absolutely insane amount of damage. For the particular skill that's gonna be here, your additional Nova Burst can also reduce the enemy's action gauge by 15% with a 100% chance after attacking. So your personal S2 is going to give you a 40% action value increase on a critical hit. So after you cast your S3 into S2, you are most likely going to be also chaining into another S1, assuming that you do not actually kill the enemy DPS, because her entire kit is just very fast. So that is basically how you play her. 3, 2, 1, very straightforward. For her passive, you kind of don't have to worry about it too much, but the number one thing is you do get 15% crit rate, which is why I say Clarissa is very easy to build her on a 4-piece speed set. Do not need to go for 4-piece insight whatsoever. The additional effects over here, it will trigger based on the number of stacks of leap on herself, and you only proc this after being attacked. So if you are going to be having all the way up to 5 stacks, it actually reduces the enemy's action gauge by 15% on top of everything else that you're going to be seeing right here, which is honestly really nice. But generally speaking, I would say the most important thing for Clarissa is just she's such a fast DPS while having consistent action value manipulation. You can definitely see play with her in PvP, especially against blue units for the additional 20% multiplier for Moon, as well as even in PvE content, where you can definitely use her in those kind of single target bosses to just further push back the enemy, right? So that's pretty much going to be how her kit works. For the journey for the Stellar Archive, I'm just going to be running the exact same build I got for everything. So this is going to be maximum speed, gets us a little bit more of the insight as well, so speed plus insight. Then these are going to be a little bit extra, while if you have any other skill points remaining for potential points, then you can invest in them. But your highest priority is definitely going to be your speed as well as crit rate. Then you can see my deck over here is actually going to be a perfect deck. Speed, this is going to be from either your Rin or your Charlotte. This is going to be from your Petra, so there's been no replacements whatsoever. This is going to be from either your Tivia or your Lacey. This card is going to be from your Bunny Claire. If you do not have a Bunny Claire, or if you want to not use Bunny Claire, because Bunny Claire is not a power card, it is a HP card. So my personal deck on Clarissa over here, you can see it's actually going to be on 2 strength, 1 HP, 1 defense, and 1 EHR, or the accuracy, which is why my strength definitely needs a very high limit break to get to still 1250. If you cannot get to these level of stats, you can consider dropping Bunny Claire for maybe Rosaria, so they can get a 10 of insight, as well as a little bit more potential points if you do not have the regard over there, right? Then the very last one is going to be Unyielding Destruction, which is going to be from our Bunny Girl Frey. So this is going to be the deck that I'm running. For my Stellar Archive, I went for all-in strength, so this is going to be 40 strength as well as 50 strength, so every possible strength we're going to be able to get it. And then for the potential, or rather right here, I really pretty much said about it. So that's basically how you're going to be building your Stellar Archive for Clarissa. Then for the gear itself, like I mentioned, it's going to be 4-piece speed and 2-piece fighting spirit always, or rather 2-piece valor. There really isn't too big of a difference as to what other ways you can build her, because if you give her 4-piece insight, she's definitely going to over crit. You could consider giving her either 4-piece attack or 4-piece destruction for crit damage, but I personally find it to be very counterintuitive, because you want her to be a very fast unit, because the more turns Clarissa is going to take, the more frequently can she cast S3 and S2, which will make the entire tempo of the fight feel a lot faster. So I think 4-piece speed is definitely going to be the best slot option, both Gauntlet as well as PP. And yes, I actually gave a first ever dedicated Reddit crafting just for Clarissa, attack, crit rate, as well as crit damage over here. Landing EHR over here is also not going to be that bad, because they might resist the action value delay, so that's going to be that. Riz is going to be a level 30, and then there's no possible skin. For the Stellar Sigil, I can kind of just show you guys. For upgrading your SR units to SSR from your Stellar Bloom, that resource is going to be obtained from your Flashpoint, but to limit break them beyond your current limit breaks, you need this thing called Remnant Core, so you can actually buy up to 7 of this for 3,500 of these books, which will instantly take your SR rebloom unit to a max limit break SSR, right? So this is pretty much, I think, the only way you can actually get this. So remember to save up 3,500 of these books in order to get your brand new rebloom unit all the way up to max limit break. Other than that, then you don't really need to worry about anything else. Just slowly farm your way up in your Flashpoint right here, which is gonna be obtained from this. So this very first quest, just do your 3 attempts every single day. You can also go for a little bit of the missions, but I want to say it is very challenging to fight against really heavy mate. I did about half of the missions right here. The other half, I will slowly try them out in the future when I have the chance to, right? So with that being established, I think we kind of just get into her actual performance discussion, specifically regarding the gauntlet. So from my personal experience that I found with Clarissa, I can just kind of show you guys a little bit of my logs. The way that you want to draft with Clarissa is that you never ever want to pick her first pick as usual because she's going to be DPS. You still want to pick your first, second, and third picks to be a very neutral pick. So if your first pick, you're still going to be going for Winning Carmen. If you're going to be second pick, you're still generally going for Faye as well as Rosaria. Then from what you want to do from a Clarissa pick objective is to get as many of the defenders as possible. Because if you're able to get defenders away from the enemy team, then there are a much lower likelihood that they're going to be able to preemptive guard your Clarissa. If the enemy defender preemptive guards your Clarissa, it might ruin your plans by quite a lot because her entire purpose is to snipe the enemy carry as fast as possible. So after getting Wen Carmen and they go for the Faye Rosaria, I just instantly went in for the Emily and Haiti, so that the only way they can actually preemptive guard my Clarissa is with a Carmen, and if they do go for a Carmen, then they're just gonna be taunting or whatever it's gonna be, which can then be blocked by my own defenders. So generally speaking, she is still gonna be not a overpowered unit, because the bans do not revolve around Clarissa. It still revolves around our top 3 most dangerous units in RTA, which is going to be Wedding Carmen, Faye, as well as Rosaria, right? So that's basically how you pick this match over here. I bet on the Faye, they bet on my Wedding Carmen, and then my Clarissa kind of just went to town for the enemy unit. They went for this reword Max Sigil Claire, which I am personally definitely going to try for myself. But you can notice one thing over here, which is Claire's build is substantially slower compared to Clarissa, because Claire does not have a lot of built-in crit, which means you're almost forced to run your 4-piece insight on this Claire in order to just make up for the lack of crit rate within her personal kit, which means that for Claire, it is almost impossible for an enemy Claire to outspeed an enemy Clarissa, because Clarissa can go for speed set, whereas Claire cannot go for speed set. So in this mirror matchup, almost 9 out of 10 times, unless you get blocked by this Carmen, your Clarissa will just straight up one-shot the enemy Claire, and the entire battle will just be 3-4, which is exactly what happened in this particular battle right here. But that being said, though, if your Claire can somehow survive, right, so if she can actually take a turn, if you get an S3 off, then there's no way to actually protect your Clarissa, because, you know, she ignores preemptive guard. Haiti is the only other person to distribute a little bit of damage from guard, but if they do manage to take a turn and they go into stealth, then your Clarissa can't really do anything about the Claire anymore, which is just gonna tilt the battle towards their side over there, right? So that's gonna be one example, and this is gonna be a second match where they went for Claire again, but this time they actually banned my Clarissa because my Clarissa absolutely destroyed the enemy team the previous time. So they try to do a little bit of target ban, and you can see over here, even though they are gonna be target banning the Clarissa, my draft still follow the same methodology. So you can see they first picked Wedding Carmen, I still went for the Rosaria into Faye, and then they picked Welts Asha into Emily. I'm just gonna be yonging up Haiti. Even though there's gonna be Tira nowadays, Haiti is still a very strong defender that can help you get the damage split over, and if you're able to somehow disable the Tyria with either by preventing their Emily's or like preventing their Wedding Carmen, or just simply using a Carmen to taunt their Tyria to not cast their Astri Nova Burst, then you can still play this battle out very easily. Then my last 2 picks is gonna be Eliza into Kira, which is also a very strong pick because they do not have any AoE. So my Kira is just gonna slowly pick out the entire team. So that is basically how you draft around your Clarissa. Then this is gonna be another match with another player. But frankly speaking, for this player, I wouldn't say that this draft was the best. So for example, they went for the first pick Faye, which is gonna be fine. But after going for Rosaria, Emily, they went for Ashira Lin. So because they went for Lin right here, she is very, very weak to units, or rather a more neutral pick from the enemy, because you essentially gave up on a defender like Haiti. So this allowed me to get double defender into a Tira for myself, and there's no good way for them to actually counter my Haiti at this point anymore. So they went for the Roberta into Eliza to counter my Tira, and then my final pick is just gonna be Clarissa. And then my Clarissa over here, because we do have the Hades guard, we kind of just survive all of our hits, and then we just slowly snipe out the entire team over and over again. So that is basically how you want to draft for these kind of scenarios. I think I can show one example where I kind of lost here. So for this particular fight is a very, very nice example of what happens if your Clarissa gets preemptive locked. So if your Clarissa is going to get blocked by any of these DPS and you cannot snipe out the Claire, that's when Claire is going to have an absolutely insane amount of value, even if you're going to be able to get first turn with a Clarissa into wedding Asha, right? So as long as you're going to be able to prevent your opponent from getting as many defenders, Clarissa is going to be having a very, very strong threat. So for example, if I were to redo this draft over here, I might have considered getting Faye into Emily instead of Faye into Rosaria. Then if I give them the Rosaria, I can actually counter myself with Roberta. So that's pretty much how I'm going to be playing this out. Then this is going to be another match, classic. I did the exact same thing over again. Yongin the defenders, last picking Tira into my Clarissa, and I just kind of sniped out the entire team here. One thing I want to kind of point out, but this is not really related to Clarissa herself, is that my Tira is actually going to be running a HP tank bruiser Tira, and I found this to be extremely effective, especially against enemy units who want to try and snipe you, like for example these Bunny, Charlotte, or even Lins. With a Haiti, a tank Tira can actually save a substantial amount of damage because of the 30% guard from Haiti, which means that if their DPS is gonna either miss a crit or get preemptive guard, Tira can almost guarantee yourself letting the Nova burst S3 to S2. So I found myself liking this bruiser build for Tira a lot. You might want to consider trying this for yourselves if you want to try something very, very fresh, right? So after that, a couple of other matches. This person is actually gonna be a Clarissa main themselves, but unfortunately for this person, their belt is just a little bit too slow at 221. So my both Scylla as well as Asha simply just outsped, and I kind of just wiped out their team from there. So this is just gonna be a little bit more of a Gilbert. And then Richard, I'm so sorry, but like bro just kept disconnecting all over the place, so it is what it is. Then for a couple of other matches, this is one of the matches, for example, they did use Clarissa, but unfortunately the Clarissa missed the crit, so they didn't manage to stall out my DPS, so I kind of just knew the entire team, so it is what it is. And then for this match over here, very nice showcase of how the double defender is able to help us prevent them from getting a hit on my DPS, because for this particular match, even though they have Tyria, which is supposed to counter my Haiti, it doesn't really matter because the Tyria could not cast her Nova Burst. There was not enough Nova Burst points for the Tyria to actually let this go. So you can see later on, she's just pretty much gonna cast, I believe it was an S2, which failed to kill my units, and then the rest of my DPS just kind of slowly one-shot the entire team, leaving Faye for the last. And this Faye, because it's not a crit rate build, there was no issue to our sustain throughout the entire course of the fight, right? So that's pretty much gonna be that. This is gonna be another match with a very nice example. Once again, going for the Haiti after I first picked these two. So I do have one defender over here. They battle my Scylla, but little do they know that my Clarissa is actually really fast anyways. So because I'm on 200 speed and their belt is so slow, I believe I was actually able to outspeed the belt and pretty much just one-shot this. So that was going to be very nice. Then all of the other few matches is going to be just a pretty standard draft, but I just want to say I have been very comfortable with this Clarissa to the PvP matchup. So yep, that is pretty much going to be all for today's content on my thoughts on the SR2S. Personally, I will say one of the strongest units that you can actually make your Stellar Bloom for, which is going to be your Wind Clarissa, right? Or your Green Clarissa. So let me know what you guys think in the thoughts and comment below on the other SR2S or Bloom units, and I'll be seeing you guys the next episode for most likely Cleric once I get myself 200 fragments, because 200 is gonna be taking quite a while. I would say probably need like at least 1 week after I clear those one-time clears. So that's pretty much it. Word of the day is gonna be pew. Join Twitch, join Discord, use code POKE of 10 for gamers up. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.